Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are going to discuss Infinite Jest from the perspective of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Infinite Jest, a favorite book of mine. No story, no book encapsulates what is going on right now in the West. We'll call it like the mental health issue, the mental health epidemic. I think no book encapsulates it better than Infinite Jest does. It just does in such a great way with a lot of layers, a lot of context, and I think that's going to be made, evident here when we analyze the hero's journey of an Infinite Jest. Because you'd think, oh, it doesn't. Infinite Jest, it's a postmodern novel. It doesn't submit to any kind of like outdated boomer, Joseph Campbell kind of structure. No, but there definitely is a structure there. It's not in chronological order, but there is a definite plot. There's a definite structure. And there is a definite hero. It's a lot like Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is there's definitely a structure there. Bruce Willis's character is the hero, clearly. It's just not told in chronological order, and it's the same thing with Infinite Jest. No, there's now David Foster Wallace takes liberties with some of these stages of the hero's journey, but there is definitely a hero's journey there, and this is how we grow. Right? This is how we grow. We all go through these stages that we're going to go over. So when, if you feel stuck somewhere, it's really good to look at art, to look at characters as they're portrayed, see how they go through these stages and how we relate with those characters and how we can, use that information as like just something to add to the stew to get our conscious moving, to get our psyche moving forward. So the next step becomes a little bit more evident for us. I think that's why this really matters. So who's the hero, though? I'm going to say it's Don Gately, and I'm almost positive that's really who the hero is. The other hero, that people would typically say is it's Hal. But I think Hal serves another purpose. I think Hal and the Incandescent family serves another purpose here. It's an important purpose. But I think when you put the entertainment, created by Hal's dad, James, when you put that into context, when you see that how that fits into Don's story, it's a little bit more evident that, yeah, Hal could maybe be an anti-hero, but he's not. I think he's something else. Same thing with Joelle. I think Joelle's a better candidate she's second place as the hero. But I think she serves another purpose. Again, no small purpose. It's still important. But I don't think she's the hero for one reason. We will get to it. So what is the hero's journey? Growth is a circle. We start here. We go through an unconscious process. We break from our conscious here. We go into the unconscious. There's 4 acts. There's the first act, the second act, the third act. There's the midpoint break here where stuff really begins to get serious. And then there's the 4th act here. The hero, we take the hero in his original state, all of his good qualities, his bad qualities, his talents, the things he doesn't do so well, the things he's untalented in. And he breaks from this conscious world, this comfort, and he learns something by delving into his unconscious. And he brings that back to his original state of consciousness. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. Now you get back here and you start all over again. We're all going around in circles. Now, is this a downward spiral or an upward spiral? That is to be determined by the actions taken here. But we all go through this process, and it's all going to be painful, no matter whether it's downward or upward. So that's what this is. So let's start with Don in the original state. What is Don? I think there's a few things. Got my notes here. Maybe glancing at them. We know he's codependent. We know he's an athlete. He's a big guy. He has a square head. That's the other reason I'm picking Don, because he's by far the most hilarious character. He has a big square head. He's he's not dumb, but he's just a little bit bumbling kind of guy. He's codependent because of his relationship with his mom, and of course he's an addict. So what is the inciting incident? What is the inciting incident in Don's life that begins this entire journey? An inciting incident that he will need to atone for, not to spoil too much, atonement with the Father, what is the inciting incident, at least in Don's life? Now, if you look at the plot or the entire story of Infinite Jest, you may want to say that the entertainment is the creation, James's creation of the entertainment is the inciting incident. I don't think that's going to be right. I think the entertainment fits into this in a little bit different way. No, I'm going to say the inciting incident is, I don't know, we'll just put this here, is he drinks vodka. Because it's not just vodka, it's his mom's vodka. And he does it so she won't drink. And he does, and I think it's when he's 9 or something. So we already see the beginning of the addict behavior, but also the codependent behavior. The kind of behavior that is going to send Don off into this unconscious world here. So I think that's the inciting incident. And what's the call to adventure? What is the call? So the call is something that happens to try to, like, it's a note that the hero receives to try to wake them up, try to wake the hero up to say, you are in this original comfort, we even say it in the context of Infinite Jest, this Oedipal state, and you need to break out of it. This is not going well. What is the call here? I think it's the Sunshine incident where those mobsters come over, those gangsters, and Fackelman, they make him watch the entertainment, I think, and then they just keep feeding Don drugs, trying to kill him, I guess. And then Don ends up on the beach, on the cold sand with the tide way out, right? This indicates you are, it's almost like you're at the edge of your unconsciousness, but you're not there yet. And we need to show you how you're not there yet. You are not comforted by the water of the unconscious, although you're heading there. That is the call to adventure. But of course, there's a refusal of the call, right? And that's how we all change. And this is why stories are great, especially really old ones, is because they show us when we are hesitant to change, when we rationalize, when something happens to us and we're not really paying attention to it. What time is it? Oh, geez. All right, let me hurry this along. And we're not really paying attention to it. We refuse. We say, oh, no, I don't really need to change. So how does Don do that? Is I think he begins to, that happens about here. He begins to burgle. So not only does he not do drugs, but he begins to commit things that are a little bit more nefarious to supply his drug addict. And what is the belly of the whale, which happens about here, the low point? This is when he kills that guy. I guess it would be manslaughter. You know what that says. He commits manslaughter, right? He kills that guy in accident. He robs his home, and he stuffs the washcloth or the towel into his mouth, but he has a cold. So I don't know why it's funny. So he suffocates. And then Don, the judge tells Don, you can go to jail or go to the Ennin house. So Don goes to the Ennin house, which I think is the supernatural aid, the Ennin house. I was trying to think, is it his sponsor in the Alligator Club? No, because it's not the sponsor, because it's just the Ennin house as a character. Look, if you're dealing, I think it's very telling that it's not just Ennin whatever, it's Ennin house, Ennin psychological house, Ennin psyche. Buildings, houses especially, they represent psyche. Don is entering the psyche of the house, of, maybe we could say, okay, so maybe the supernatural aid is the guy who started Ennin house, the guy who took Alcoholics Anonymous so seriously that he didn't even use his first name, and he made people show their dedication to sobriety by eating rocks. And what does this really represent is its structure. It is structure that changes your behavior and gets you to manage your outer challenge. The thing that is perceptively wrong in your life. In Don's case, it's his addiction. And that's what happens at the end of the road to trials here, which is I think the AA meetings. Now, so I think whenever there's an AA meeting portrayed in the book, that is the road to trials. Whether Don's there, we know he's at some, but we don't know. He could be at all of them. We don't know. But I think this represents what Don needs to go through to hear these stories, to relate with these people, so he can come to terms with all of his issues that he had in conscious, when he was conscious, so to speak, or thought he was conscious. It was really just a comfort, a very narrow view of looking at the world. And he needs to be broken out of that. And he breaks out of that by developing relationships with other people. Relationships, by their nature, are no longer codependent. So that would be, and this is where you handle your outer challenge, right? So Don gets sober. He no longer drinks or uses drugs. And then I think the midpoint here, this is when Don becomes part of the staff of Ennet House. He is fully submitted and committed to the process of the house, to the psyche of the house. And then we have the meeting with the goddess, which is, of course, going to be, well, maybe not of course, Joelle. This is why I don't think that she's the hero, because she really serves the meeting with the goddess for Don. Don is, how do I say this? Okay, so she's the most beautiful woman in the world, or, up there, and she's the face of the entertainment, which I I think that matters here too. Her face aggravates the Oedipal issue that the entertainment aggravates, or that the entertainment triggers in people. Her face is a part of that. It's her beauty, and Don loves her, or at least we see the beginnings of love there, regardless of what her face looks like. Not only is it in a veil, but is she disfigured? Does it matter? I think a lot of the questions that are left open-ended in Infinite Jest, what does Joel's face really look like? Is it really disfigured? Did the entertainment get out? Did the AFR get it? Did Hugh Steeply's side get it? I think what makes this book so wonderful is that these events, they're so low on the totem pole of priority. It gets akin to hearing like some juicy gossip about your neighbor. It doesn't really matter at a certain point once you can go through the arc that Don goes through. Which is why I just definitely convince myself that he is a hero. So he can love Joelle regardless of what her face looks like. And he's honest, he's open, he's authentic. I think it's very telling that Joelle comes into his house, right? He's the staffer there. It's now his house. She comes into his psyche, representing the healthy, unadulterated nature of their relationship, as opposed to Oren's relationship with Joelle earlier. It was the exact opposite, right? Oren was playing tennis and he went to go play football just so he could get the chance to meet Joelle. It was all about how she looked, and there are a lot of messed up parts of that relationship. So, and I think it's also telling that Oren is arguably the villain of Infinite Jest. So, Don's relationship with Joelle, it's not just Joelle, right? That's not meeting the goddess. It's Don's relationship with her. And then there's the goddess. There's also the temptress, which I think is going to be the entertainment. This is the woman as temptress. This represents the Oedipal issue, which of course the entertainment indicates, right? It's just this beautiful woman bending over a crib. You're the baby in the crib, and she's just saying, sorry. I'm sorry for the burden of existence. I'm sorry you have to engage in consistent action to get your needs met. I'm sorry I can't be there to comfort you. It's all my fault. It's not your fault. It really represents like the perfect rationalization. The rationalization that's so good that we don't even see. And I think it's very telling that it comes from the mind of James and Condensa, who is sorry, I thought I heard something. Who represents this strong intellect. He's a genius, but he doesn't have wisdom to keep up with that genius, right? It's like the Star Trek, the Star Trek conflict. It's like, well, you need enough wisdom to keep up with your technological advancement. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourselves, right? It's nuclear energy. Can you you can use nuclear energy to heat a city or to incinerate it, right? It's not about the technology, it's about the wisdom behind it. And James, his head, the entertainment, all represents that. And plus he made it because he wanted to communicate with Hal. So it represents where the Oedipal issue comes from, or why men succumb, or more likely to succumb to the Oedipal issue: poor communication, poor attachment with your father. Even though he's this really smart guy, perhaps the smartest guy, it doesn't matter. So the entertainment is definitely the woman is temptress. And then we have the atonement with the father, with that which has the most power in Don's life, which is, well, at this point, it could be several, it could be coming to terms with the manslaughter. It could be the codependent issue. Look, I'm just going to say it's when the AFR goes to the Enid house and they get in a fight, and he saves Randy Lenz's life. Now, he doesn't do it on purpose to save Randy Lenz's life, but he's like, that's like a kind of protection, because he's the staffer. It's his house. It's his psyche. And so he fights off the AFR guys. He gets stabbed. Saves Randy Lenz, a guy who's a questionable guy. Like, is he even worth saving? I don't know. It's part of the atonement. When he killed this guy. So he killed a guy who didn't deserve it. Now he saved a guy who maybe didn't deserve it. There's like an atonement element there. I think that's good. And then there's the apotheosis. This is where I think so Don's in the hospital. His sponsor visits him, and I think it's in general. So it's not just when his sponsor visits him, but it's Don trying to communicate to people that, hey, I'm an addict. Don't give me any drugs. Oh, my sponsor's here. Oh, I got to ask him what to do, and he's like, kind of in this fretful state, even though I guess he's in a coma and he can't really talk to people and nobody can hear him. That's the apotheosis. That's the deep insight, is you are on your own. You're outside of your house. You're on your own. It's going to be okay regardless, because you have submitted yourself to a process through which, whether you take the drugs as, pain medication or not, it's going to be immaterial, because you have already submitted yourself to this process. And it's Don's realization of that by his inability to communicate. His sponsor shows up. I love it. I love these Alligator Club guys. His sponsor shows up and he's just making jokes. His point in Don's life, or in the novel, where Don is like, this is the most serious thing I've ever been up against, and his sponsor's there. And he's just laughing, because maybe it's not that serious. Maybe it's not that serious because you've already submitted to this process, and you just need to realize that you're going to be fine on your own. And I can tell you, working with addicts and alcoholics, like, this is an issue that comes up. Oh, I got to go in for surgery. Do I take the medication? And, some people do, some people don't. I don't think it matters either way. I think as long as you submit to the process, whether you have a certain drug in your system doesn't really mean you're sober. After a certain point, after the point where you can actually become the Enid house, whatever, the Enid house is for you. And then the boon here is, I guess what I was just saying, like, it all happens at the same time. Drugs. Does he take the drugs? Does he not? Does it not really matter? I don't think it really does matter. And then we have a magic flight. Wait. Yeah, I don't know. We have the magic flight, which is, okay, so Don has this information. Like, what does he learn here? He learned to submit himself to a process, and he learned that he's going to be fine on his own. He in a sense, he atoned for the codependence and the addiction. Right? The addiction here and the codependence here. He can be fine on his own, but there is a sense in which, like, you can't just take this stuff back to consciousness. And I think this is when James shows up as, shows up as the Wraith. And he gives Don the vision of, you're going to be digging up my head with my son. The head representing the perfect rationalization. You are going to need to face off with the perfect rationalization. Like the perfect Oedipal issue, like the thing that will trigger the addict behavior and the codependent behavior at the same time. You are going to be faced off with that. you are going to need to dig that up. Which I guess is just, I don't know, kind of a challenge. And then crossing the return threshold, or just in general, I don't know if this is a specific point, but Joel showing up and telling them about the Enid house. So just giving them the news. You know, it's no big deal, just telling them what's going on. But telling them, like, hey, you're in your coma here. And again, this could all be a vision. We don't know if Joelle really showed up, I guess. I had to look this up and talk with my buddy Derek about it, who, of course, knows more about the details of this book than I do. But she shows up and just tells him about what's going on in the Enid house, telling him about the thing that matters. Telling him that's going to get him back to reality. And then the Master of Two Worlds is... he digs up the head. Now, again, is the tape, is the entertainment with James's head? We don't know. Because there's that line, as my buddy Derek reminded me this weekend when he was over, we're too late. So the AFR, the Quebecois, the separatist guys, they were too late. Does this mean that Hugh Steeply's side has the tape? I don't know. I don't think it matters, because what would Hugh Steeply's side do with the tape? They would just release it in a more accidental way, because they don't really understand the power of it. So it's going to be released no matter what. But again, I think it's just the woman as Tentress. And really it puts the whole Incandenza storyline into perspective, where it fits. Though it seems really important, and it seems like the Incandenza family and their issues, and, you know, Avril and CT, and is CT really Mario's dad, like all this stuff, it puts it in context to say, this is simply showing how difficult this process is. It provides context to show how difficult all this muck is, and how difficult it was for Don to get out of it. Hal is a sacrificial lamb. Hal is an anti-hero. No, he's a very elaborate sacrificial lamb that kind of borders on anti-hero, but I think he's just a sacrificial lamb. And that doesn't, denigrate Hal's place in the story. I think it's really important. This is why Infinite Jest's top 5 book is, because there's layers upon layers in all the other characters, like the Enfield Tennis Academy, right? This is just a microcosm of the world. There's King Gompert, poor Tony Krause, like I said, CT, Pemulus, all the incest stuff, all the stuff between Orin and Avril, and it just provides context. It's like little mirrors that shine light effectively into Don Gately's psyche, into what he's going through here, and in effect what we all need to go through. And so that's the Master of Two Worlds. As you get to the end, and this thing that can't be released, it's going to be released no matter who has it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. I think it's very similar to the end of Apocalypto, when the Conquistadors show up, and those two Mayan guys are still chasing Jaguar Pa, and they succumb to the Conquistadors because of what Jaguar Pa went through. Because, he went from being the hunted to being the hunter. He is able to form a psychological house, his own Enid house. And he can go back into the jungle and live on his own with his family. Right? He has the resources to do that. So, do the Conquistadors come? Of course they do. Is the entertainment release? Of course it doesn't matter. After a certain point, these things don't matter. And I think that's what's so cool about Infinite Jest, is it just portrays that really well. The characters stand out. Don as a character is awesome. He's just like the coolest character, I think. And aside from that, right? I mean, there's just all this good stuff in Infinite Jest that allows us to reflect on our own lives. I encourage you guys to read it. And, if you want to get out of this mess, we have a way. I think it's a little bit more grounded. I have a lot of good things to say about AA and 12-step in general, but there are some issues there. I wrote that article about it. But if you want a way out of the mess, there is a way out. We can help you with that. animusempire.com/schedule. Just reach out. We do consultations. My goal is just to learn whatever I can about you, and you can ask me questions. But we have a way of There's a very specific process, right? You need to submit yourself to a process. And we can make that process amazingly clear for you. Doesn't mean you're going to do it, and of course doesn't make it easy. In fact, in a way, it can make it harder, because once you see the simplicity of the process, it's really nothing else except you and the process. And it's like, are you going to do it? Yeah, you're going to do it. But how long is it going to take? How long are you going to refuse the call and go back to doing whatever your version of burglarizing people is? And leave comments if you disagree with any of these. If how I analyze it here, let me know in the comments. Let me know how right I am. Let me know how wrong I am. Thank you guys. And remember that it's not about what happens to you in life. There's that Henry Ford quotation. Life isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond. It's not about how you respond. It's more about how you can submit yourself to a process through which you will be able to respond.